We're hardwired for it, in fact. Because stories are about, they're all the same basically. They're all, there's a plot, a character, and a moral. That's what makes a story. And a plot, what makes a plot, if I say, I got up this morning and came to Kennedy School, it's not very interesting. I got up this morning, looked outside where my car was supposed to be, and instead there was a big spot there, and I heard a screeching noise on the roof, and I start, talking about, the descent of the Green Dragons in Cambridge, well, whatever. It only gets interesting, a plot becomes interesting when the unexpected intervenes. And that's when we all lean forward, and that's when we pay attention. And so then you sort of have to say, well, why are we all paying attention at that point, even if it's a crazy green dragon or something? Well, the reality is that as human beings, one of the central modes that we experience is having to deal with the unexpected. I mean, because we have this gift of consciousness, because we can anticipate and remember, we experience the plan got screwed up. And our brain has evolved what's called a surveillance system. It detects anomalies. So we're going along, you're driving along, you're on autopilot, in your car, you're driving, and a truck pulls out. Well, it triggers the surveillance system in your brain, and your brain is then saying, truck, 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 truck. And you experience it as anxiety, which then calls your attention and equips you to deal with it. So the basic mechanism for detecting the unexpected, we've evolved. Because we have to, otherwise we keep driving into trucks or the equivalent thereof. Now, the problem is that the default reaction we have to that is fear. The default reaction to anxiety is, I got to run away, or I got to strike out. Now, that may have been functional back in the caveman days. It's not functional when you have to respond to threats as opposed to react to them. In other words, when response requires thought, it requires intentionality. So culturally, we evolved narrative. We evolved storytelling. Because what storytelling does, it enables us to identify with the protagonist of the story. Because we can identify, we experience in the story the challenge, we experience the fear, but we also experience how the protagonist finds hope, how they find confidence, how they are able to deal with it. And because we can identify empathetically with a protagonist in a story, then the stories begin to teach our hearts, not just our heads, where do we go to get hope? Where do we go to get these emotional resources we need to cope with the threat and uncertainty? But so that we're able to respond, not simply react. And those sources turn out to be sources of value for us, because we map the world cognitively, but we also map the world affectively. As we grow up, what inspires us, what's fearful, what's disgusting, and that emotional mapping is really how we understand value. In other words, value is not an intellectual proposition, it's an emotional response. And so we begin to learn that there are sources of hope that we go to, sources of inspiration that we go to. And that's why families and faith traditions all teach through stories. What they're teaching is how to access those resources so we're able to act with agency and not react with fear. And the research on this is like 85% of the time that parents spend with young children storytelling. What are they doing? They're helping us learn how to be choiceful human beings, how to find hope, how to deal with fear. It's not the tactics of it, it's the emotional capacity. That's what stories teach. And that's why everybody tells stories. And sort of what in the work that I do, what we're doing is not really teaching somebody something new. We're enabling people to understand explicitly what they do implicitly, so they can be more intentional and purposeful about it. Especially when it comes to leadership, where the narrative, the leadership narrative is a linking of narrative to to communicate why I'm called to this leadership role, and what's the challenge that we face, and what are the values we share that can equip us to deal with this challenge. Call it a story of self, a story of us, a story of now. That's kind of a basic construct of how narrative is used in leadership.